It was sort of in this moment. It happened literally in June of 2020, right after the murder of George Floyd, that I thought, oh my gosh, this is it. This is why I've been on this journey for 18 years. I'm meant to take the experiences, both the good and the bad, and help these founders get to success much quicker.
Welcome to Maker's Mindset. I'm your host, Nancy Twine. In this episode, I'm in conversation with Nyakio Grieco, a renowned beauty entrepreneur and advocate for clean, inclusive beauty that suits all skin types, tones, and needs. Nyakio founded the award-winning brand Nyakio in 2002, drawing on her Kenyan heritage and family beauty secrets. She later sold Nyakio Beauty to Unilever in 2017. And just 3 years later, in 2020, Nyakio co-founded 13 Lune, an innovative retail concept spotlighting beauty brands created by BIPOC founders. Her latest product venture, Relevant, offers clean, science-driven skincare suitable for all skin tones and types. This range recently expanded into cosmetics, focusing on inclusive colors and complexion products with skincare benefits. Nyakio's contributions to the beauty industry have earned her prestigious recognitions, including the CEW 2023 Female Founder Award, Beauty Matter 2023 Future 50 Award, and a spot on the Inc. Magazine 2023 Female Founders 200 list. Let's go ahead and jump in. Nyakio, I'm so excited that you're here. I feel like most people don't realize this, but you've been in the beauty industry for over 2 decades now, and you've had the unique experience of launching and selling a business, then going into the beauty retail space, launching your second brand.
Yes.
You've had quite the entrepreneurial journey, and I want to start from the beginning. So what inspired you to launch in the beauty space and then ultimately launch your first brand, Nyakio Beauty, back in 2002?
Yeah. So first of all, thank you so much for having me. It's always such an honor when I get to spend time with you. And, I am a first generation American of Kenyan descent. I was born in New York, but raised in Oklahoma. And after I graduated from the University of Oklahoma, I moved out to LA because I wanted to work in Hollywood, as they do. My first job was as an assistant at a big talent agency, and I sort of worked my way through Hollywood and ended up on the representation side, mostly with actresses. And I found very quickly that my favorite part of the industry was actually the fashion and beauty aspect and not reading scripts and finding actors' jobs. And so this was the early 2000s, in a time where we were starting to see actors replace models on covers and get beauty deals with large corporations. And so it was really exciting to me at that time to be on set. And I would find myself mostly in the makeup trailers and talking to the stylists and playing with products. And because I worked, on a team that represented a lot of A-list actors, we had a lot of product come across our desk. And a lot of times I got to take it home, and being a beauty fanatic, it was my joy. And, as I started to study the ingredients and really, because my first beauty inspiration came from my grandmother, who was a Kenyan coffee farmer and who taught me my first beauty recipe. And my grandfather was a medicine man. So my mom always used, those practices to treat our skin and treat our hair, treat our ailments. But when I would look at these ingredients on these products, I often would find amazing ingredients from Africa, but industry-wide, nobody was talking about the sophistication of Africa or the rich resources of Africa. And so at the ripe old age of 27, I decided that I was going to leave my job and I was going to start making my grandmother's coffee scrub and my grandfather's oils. And that's how I ended up in the industry.
Wow, that's incredible. And actually, we share that in common because I launched Briogeo when I was 28, and I was also inspired.
It's our Saturn return.
Exactly, totally. And the family tradition of, building products and learning about ingredients very much inspired my journey too. So that's really, really cool. Yeah. And in 2017, you actually sold your business to Unilever, and you became one of the first few Black female entrepreneurs who have sold their company to a big beauty conglomerate. Yeah. And what was that moment like for you? And how did you know that it was time to sell your business?
Yeah, it was interesting because I had partnered with another portfolio of brands only 2 years before that acquisition. At the time that it happened, I think I really understood that in order for that brand to really have the potential to reach the heights that I felt like it could, because even though it was Unilever and, Nyakio, the beauty brand named after my grandmother, not myself, was still so niche. And it was hard after 18 years. Like, how am I going to scale this business to the place where I knew I could go? And so for that reason, it made the most sense. And it also gave me an incredible opportunity. And to your point, that so few people of color, women of color get to be in the halls of a large conglomerate and understand how to better serve a consumer that's been underserved for a long time, and to learn, what happens on the other side of those big glass doors and glass ceiling. And so for that, it felt like the right time, and it obviously led me to where I am today. So I'm grateful.
Absolutely. And as you look back on that venture, is there anything of significance that you had wished you had done differently?
Many things. Many. I think what's interesting, I will say that, starting a brand at 27 years old, I also learned very quickly how difficult it would be to scale a business, raise money, all of the things as a woman of color. But where I really feel blessed is that I had naivete on my side. I didn't know the stats. I didn't have everybody telling me, media. There was no social media at that point, but the media, others telling me that I had less than 0.0006% chance of doing it. And so I think resilience is something I'm very grateful for. But the one thing that I've learned many things, but the one thing that I would go back and do differently is really, really practice how to value my self-worth. And this happens for many entrepreneurs, but especially women and people of color, that you're so desperate to keep your brand going that you go into negotiations or opportunities so desperate for the check to stay relevant, to stay on shelf, that you often undercut your value. And so I'd say, looking back, I would learn to say no more if I could do anything different, and trust the process that you're going to kiss a lot of frogs. You don't have to get in bed with all of them.
Right. I mean, the power of saying no, it requires a lot of discipline, but you're absolutely right. I mean, staying focused on your vision, knowing your values, that's how you really create a path towards long-term success.
100%.
So 3 years after you sold your beauty company, now we're in 2020.
Yes.
You pivoted into the beauty retail space, which is a very different and very dynamic place to be.
Yes.
So tell us about what 13 Lune is, why you decided to create this retail concept.
Yes. So I was still working with the Nyakio brand in 2020. Obviously, we were all, shell-shocked to be in a global pandemic, but we were also in the midst of a racial reckoning at the most heightened point of racism in our lifetime that we had experienced. And in that process, in support, a lot of listicles were coming out, in support of Black-owned businesses, lists that you were on, lists that I was on. While it was lovely to receive the attention, it was built on the precipice of this heartbreaking time. So it was really hard to get excited about beauty sales when we were really thinking about survival in all the ways. And so at that moment, Nyakio was 18 years old, had launched and relaunched, gone to different portfolio homes several times. And it became, according to a Spate report, the #1 fastest growing Black founded skincare brand in America. Wow. And in that moment, I thought, wow, this is what it took to get here. And as opposed to being angry about it, being frustrated by it, I decided to be gracious, but I also decided to start shopping those lists, because that felt like doing something, like taking my pain and turning it into purpose. And while I was shopping these lists, I was floored of how many brands. Sometimes we would be on lists of 500, 1,000, and how many brands were on these lists, Black-owned brands in America, that I had never heard of before. And I'd been in the industry for 18 years. And in premium skincare, often felt like I was the only at shelf. And so I bought the products. I started sliding into people's DMs, asking them about themselves, their brands, what are their goals. I was very surprised how many of them had heard of Nyakio, because even though it was a Unilever brand, it was still so niche at that point. I started forming friendships and allyship with these founders. And It was sort of in this moment. It happened literally in June of 2020, right after the murder of George Floyd, that I thought, oh my gosh, this is it. This is why I've been on this journey for 18 years. I'm meant to take the experiences, both the good and the bad, and help these founders get to success much quicker. And so that's how 13 Lune was born. I partnered up with one of my best friends who we had talked about starting something together for years. We just couldn't figure out what it was. And, we went to this lunch, and over that lunch, 13 Lune was conceived to be the first of its kind, truly inclusive beauty retail platform. At that time, even when people were trying to support my first brand, I would get asked a lot of silly questions like, well, I want to buy your face oil, but I'm not Black. Can I use it? At that moment, I thought, well, gosh, this is going to be a great opportunity to really help educate a segment of the United States that still believes that Black and brown people only make products for ourselves. Of course, we formulate for ourselves, for our skin, for our hair. But at the end of the day, I wear Laura Mercier powder and we don't look a thing alike. So how do we help people to understand? And most importantly, I believe the beauty industry, being a multi-billion-dollar industry, can be a true catalyst for helping to solve for systemic racism. And so by building generational wealth through the lens of beauty, and beauty is for everyone, it's universal, we could be a real player. And that lunch was in June of 2020, and we raised money in November of 2020, and we launched in December of 2020. So it was obviously meant to be.
I mean, that's so incredible and so inspiring. And it really shows to what you can accomplish just even in the matter of a few years when you have a vision and passion. Absolutely. And you really go for it. And, you talked about something that I really resonate with also, because when I started Briogeo, there was this misconception that Briogeo was only for Black women, only for textured hair. Yeah. And I really created Briogeo to be for everyone. And one of the things that I wanted to do was to really sort of desegregate the beauty aisle and create products that everyone could identify with. And you're right, the beauty industry is a big one, especially as Black entrepreneurs. I'm a big proponent of let's not silo ourselves. Let's go after the big piece of the pie. And
absolutely. And all hair has texture and skin is skin. Everyone has melanin, just some of us have more. That was one of the most surprising things to me, with the fact that people, I would use the word melanin, which is, we all have it. Right. And people would assume melanin just means Black or brown. And so, you can get frustrated by ignorance. I'm definitely not someone that believes that ignorance is bliss. I think ignorance is just ignorance and can be very harmful. But if you come from a place of hope and purpose, then you can help to educate. And I love the fact that 13 Lune has really helped to sort of open people's eyes. And when you look at our demographic of consumers, it really is 50-50 BIPOC and non-BIPOC consumers. And, when I think about our 90-10 rule, you can go across any industry, anybody, if you're thinking about starting a fashion brand, if you're thinking about opening up a shopping center, whatever it may be, if you can apply the 90-10 rule. And, much like, Aurora's 15% pledge, which was really the kickoff point for ownness, getting to shelf is just the first step. It's, steps 2 through 10, the check writers, the consumers coming and exploring and discovering these brands, et cetera, that we will, achieve the success that we all deserve.
Yeah. And I'm really curious, because now that you're in the retail space, what have been some of the biggest differences you've experienced between running a beauty product line and running, a retail platform? And what are some of those unique challenges that you've had to navigate?
Yeah. So, 60 days after we launched 13 Lune, we got the call from JCPenney asking us to become a store-in-store concept within JCPenney Beauty. So we always knew we were going to be omni-channel. We definitely didn't think it would happen in the first 60 days of our existence. And so, the biggest challenge, we just completed in May of 2023, the rollout of our 608 13 Lune at JCPenney stores. We opened a flagship, and we're only 36 months old. And so I'd say the biggest challenge has been not only accomplishing that kind of growth over 36 months, but making sure that we are primed to nurture our brand so that they can keep up with the growth. You know,
So important.
we really thought long and hard about the JCPenney partnership and, you know, fully understanding, because I am our brand founders. I have gone to shelf to die, you know, not having the infrastructure, the marketing support, dollars, investment to win at shelf. And so we didn't want to set our brands up for that. And so we had to really work closely with JCPenney to make sure that we were offering the right terms so that these brands could focus on getting their inventory, being able to show up for their brands. And so, you know, the biggest challenge is just the understanding of growing a startup while also expanding so quickly. It's been wonderful for the business, but there have been, you know, a lot of key learnings and, you know, a big responsibility. I feel a huge responsibility to our partners and our brands and these founders. And while we as founders will all make our own mistakes, I'm just determined to make sure they don't make the mistakes that I've made. And so it's beyond a retail relationship. And also because I've started another brand, it's been wonderful to sit alongside these brands on shelf and to finally feel seen as a founder within a community of founders in a way that I never did before.
And I know you mentioned earlier that you didn't go at this business alone. You have a co-founder. You also have an investor. And so as you were fundraising for 13 Lune, what were some of the things that were really important to you in selecting your investors, especially as it relates to finding a partner that understands your consumer and your concept?
Right. You know, investment is a marriage. And I think it took me a long time to really understand that this goes way beyond the check. And that kind of goes back to my earlier statement about self-worth. And it's funny to say this. It was a beautiful process, you know, in those early days of our pre-seed round and, you know, angel investors, friends and family. It was an invitation, you know, and it didn't come from a place of desperation. It came from a place of so many people truly understanding that. And my co-founder, Patrick, says this all the time, that you can build a highly profitable business and do really good work in the world at the same time. And so it was really just like, it was like an invitation to a virtual party in 2020 of, this is what we're going to build. So there was a lot of excitement, and it was the fastest I had ever raised $1.5 million in my life to get the platform going. And then, of course, once we inked the deal with JCPenney, we knew we were going to have to go out and raise again. And that's when we brought on some institutional funds, but we brought on funds like the Fearless Fund, you know. And the Fearless Fund, led by Erin Simone, is a fund started by all Black women to invest in people of color. And that was exciting because I had never had a Black female investor before. In every step of raising, and we've been very nimble, Patrick and I were both dedicated to not being on a venture hamster wheel. We had both raised money in the past and sort of depleted ourselves of all of our value in certain scenarios just for the check. And we were never going to do that again. So I think what, you know, the biggest key learning is understanding, you know, it goes back to know, because we've also now gotten to a point where we get inbound, that this is a partnership. It is a marriage. You want investors that are going to be there in the best of times and the investors you can call on when things get rough. I love having investors that are smarter than I am in so many areas, whether it's strategically from a financial perspective, marketing, tech. I mean, technically we are a tech company. We're a platform. You know, fundraising is never fun. As a founder, you feel like you're doing it all the time. But, you know, having a supportive cap table and people, you know, whether there are angel investors like Gwyneth or there are institutional investors like Capstar or Lifeline or Fearless Fund, they really are part of our family, and they are so invested in the success of 13, but they're even more invested in making a difference and helping these founders to win.
That's great. And you talked a bit about your investors, you talked about your co-founder, but you're also building a team. And I'm so curious to know how your leadership style has evolved over time and just your perspective on what it takes to build a winning team.
Yeah. You know, that's such a great question. I feel like I'm learning every day. But, you know, when I started Nyakio, my first brand, I was literally the founder, shipping and receiving, customer service, a horrific accountant. I mean, I was a solo entrepreneur in all the ways. I had a public storage where I kept my products. I bought a 4Runner so that I'd have a car big enough to go fill the boxes, take them to UPS every single day. That was my life for years. And then as I started to evolve in that business and join portfolios like the Laura Mercio Gerwich portfolio, I was there for a while. And then the next portfolio that took me to Unilever, a lot of times team was chosen for me. So 13 Lune has been the first time that I've had a co-founder, which has been a glorious experience for me and for us, and also built teams organically and been the boss. I've always been a collaborative person, and that hasn't changed. But what's more important is skill set and resilience and anticipating, having the power to anticipate what can we learn from you, understanding generationally through our staff. A company born on Zoom during a global pandemic that was remote. We hired for talent, not location. And so my leadership style, and I think many founders have to work on our control issues, has had to, trying to micromanage or control has had to take such a back seat because there's so much trust that goes into a remote team. But every day I'm learning. You have to learn when do you have too many people? Where do you need to pull back? And those are really tough decisions to make. So I'm just grateful to have a really strategic executive team to help me along the way.
Absolutely. Team is everything.
Everything.
And when people ask me what have been some of the most challenging parts of being an entrepreneur, oftentimes it's the people piece because it's so dynamic.
Managing people is a really, I have kids and and there are challenges in being a mom and taking care of them, keeping them safe, helping get them educated, et cetera, all the things. But, managing people, we all have different personalities. We all come from different backgrounds. It's a fine line of balancing personalities. Yeah, it can be quite challenging.
And Nyakio, I respect you so much because you have so many things going on and you do everything you do so well. Like, I feel like you don't just take on projects to take on projects. You take on things that you're passionate about and that you will find the capacity to really nurture it. And on top of running 13 Lune, you recently launched a second beauty line, Relevant. So I want to hear more about the inspiration behind the brand, why you chose to launch a second line, and also what are you taking from that first experience with your original brand and applying to this one?
So much. And that's, this second chance to create another brand. Well, first of all, it's the first time that I've truly ever had the autonomy, the team, the infrastructure, and the capital to build what I've wanted to build. And so that is a gift that I am so grateful and in such gratitude for every single day. But it really is a culmination of my 20 years of experience before launching Relevant and getting a chance to not only, my first brand, it was steeped in sourcing rich, natural, incredible ingredients, ethically and sustainably sourced from around the globe to create Nyakio. The one thing that I didn't have the opportunity to do at the capacity that I wanted to do with Nyakio was really bring in the science. Like, at the heart of it all, I am a nerd. I love science. I love being in the labs. I want to know everything. I want to know about efficacy. I like data. I like testing. And I had never had the chance to do that in my first brand. There just wasn't the budgets for it. And so now, I get to really have the best educators when it comes to skin and serving all skin tones, meaning that I hired 2 Black chemists who are geniuses to help me create these formulas with the skincare piece. And it's been such an amazing aha moment of, well, no wonder when I used that peel from XYZ brand, I had to run to the dermatologist because I burned my face because I wasn't considered in those formulations. And so Relevant is really a brand that is dedicated to bringing the best of nature and science to your skincare regimen, but done and created at safety levels that will not harm melanin-rich skin. But also, even with cosmetics, which we just launched, prioritizing a consumer who has long been underserved while still serving all. So I'll use, for example, with our foundation sticks, we merchandise from the deepest shade to the lightest shade. So we're covering all consumers, and we're not using words like dark or ebony or mocha. We're using words like empower, inspire, revel, things that can really evoke joy. And I think in such a saturated market in beauty, if you're not really truly speaking to your consumer's heart through your products, you're not going to win. And why? Like, there's so much, you have to have the why and the reason. And for us with Relevant, the why is we see you.
Mm-hmm. Wonderful. It's so beautiful. And the products are just
Thank you.
Stunning. And I mean, you've done such an incredible job.
Thank you so much.
And we've obviously talked a lot about you as an entrepreneur, but I also want to talk about you personally, because I think you have some really great perspective. I mean, oftentimes when I'm talking to entrepreneurs, one of the things that's really tough for them is how do I, manage building a business, but also taking care of things at home? Like how do you strike that balance? And I know you said you don't believe in balance.
Well, that's it, just because it doesn't exist in my life. Right. So I believe in it. For those of you that are balanced, well done. Right. I am definitely not a person who claims to have figured that out yet.
But you have routines, and we've talked in the past about some of your routines.
Yes, I do have routines.
And I think it's so important. And I'd love for you to share some of those things that you're doing to maintain the energy to do everything that you do.
I mean, we as founders live very busy lives. I'm a mom, I'm a wife, I'm a girlfriend that to my girlfriends that really, truly prioritizes my female friendships. And so, it's all about gas in your tank, right? And so the gas in my tank really comes from self-care. And I'd say my number one self-care party hack is I sleep a lot. And I'm so blessed to be one of those people that can fall asleep easily anywhere. I fall asleep before a plane takes off. I wake up when we land, and so I'm really, really grateful for that. I nap almost every single day. And I think I shared with you that there's even, a method to the madness of my napping, and it's very strategic. It's scheduled. And it's not for too long. It always starts with meditation. So, internally balancing out my nervous system is how everything else comes together. And you'll see if I go off the rails and I'm not prioritizing my rest, I'm forgetting things. I'm not showing up in the best way as a patient mother. I'm not being a great wife. I'm not returning texts to my girlfriends. And it's wild because it will only happen as a result of my lack of rest. So I really prioritize rest. And it's something that we are all gifted with being able to do. And then, I look at our lives as like 100% pie. And truly, sometimes work is getting 80%. And, I'm a recovering people pleaser. I'm 50 now. So like, all the things I convinced myself to feel guilty about for so many years and wasted. And this goes out to all you young moms, drop the mom guilt. It's one of those things that, I'm okay with the fact that sometimes, even in our busy lives as an entrepreneur, my family is getting that 80%. And, I think the biggest part is going easy on yourself and knowing that, sometimes this gets 80%, sometimes this gets 60%, but nothing is ever going to be equally balanced.
Yeah, it's a really good perspective.
Thank you.
So I know from our past conversations, and even today, you talked about how important friendships are to you. And I think that's so special. I love that about you. And how do you go about really investing and maintaining those relationships when you have so much going on in the background?
I think I've learned over the years, when it comes to friendships, you have to be very intentional about them. And what I have come to learn to prefer is intentional physical time together. So by that, I mean, yes, I love to grab a dinner or grab a drink, have lunch with a girlfriend. But truth is, I don't really have that much time to do those things. And so by prioritizing my closest friendships, we do this thing called circling. And it's something we've been doing since our 20s. And my friend Andrea Bendewald has actually now turned it into a business called The Art of Circling. And since we were in our 20s, we would gather for this sort of intentional time. And we would do it on the full moon, on the new moon, anytime that there was something to celebrate. If, when we've lost parents, when we were having a hard time with fertility, whatever it is, we would gather together intentionally at a scheduled time and have a time where we talk about in a round, in a circle, and whoever has the floor. So it's taught us to be very active listeners and talk about, what we want to let go of, what we're trying to call in, hard times, celebration times, moments where we want to really hold the space for each other intentionally. And so that is something that unless I'm traveling, never miss those moments to circle with my girlfriends.
Yeah, I think that word intention is so powerful because, it happens to all of us. You'll go to dinner with a group of people and you hardly get to catch up with everyone.
It's a long table, not a circle table. Yeah.
So really carving out that time to be intentional about what you talk about and making sure everyone gets their airtime is really, really important.
Yeah. And, as I've grown up, I still say it's like my halftime show, but my circle of people has gotten larger in some ways, but even intentionally, I think about, I didn't have what we have in our founder group chat. I didn't have that as a founder in the early days. Maybe I knew a couple of founders, but we didn't share information, resources, support each other, celebrate each other in the way so that has sort of grown, which is exciting because you don't really expect to make these new friends, but then also to have the commonality of being in the same industry. That's something I'm super grateful for. But also in some ways, my circle has gotten smaller and I've realized that that's okay. And I've accepted that, some relationships have a contract just like some of our contracts in business do. And sometimes those contracts are in perpetuity and sometimes those contracts are meant to end. And so just by holding the space for each other, if those contracts end and the well wishes happen and holding the space for their success as you hope they are for you has also made it easier. Because I think, as I said, I was a recovering people pleaser. I think I used to hang on to certain friendships because of the time that had been invested in them. And sometimes we outgrow each other and that's okay, And so that's been a really enlightening and impactful sort of revolution. It's made those friendships that are so intentional even more intentional.
So Nyakio, you definitely have a maker's mindset. You are such an optimistic person.
Thank you.
And there are a lot of entrepreneurs and business people out there that are navigating a lot of challenges and setbacks. And what advice or perspective would you give to them on how to stay motivated and inspired while navigating all those challenges?
Yeah, I think it's first and foremost, it's so important to take care of ourselves mentally. It really is mind, body, spirit. It's a lot. It's not as glamorous as everyone thinks it is. And so if you're not paying attention to that self-love, to that spirit, and whether, I'm a big believer in therapy, if you can afford therapy, I'm so grateful that now there's so many resources online that people can have access to therapy that didn't exist before. That's something that's really, really important. First and foremost is taking care of your mind. Getting rest, taking care of your body, moving your body, all of that. But I'd say that the number one piece of advice that I would give from the business perspective is ask for help. I think as women, historically, we've been afraid to ask for money. We have to wipe that, whatever that is, that holds us back. Men ask for money from each other all the time and ask for help all the time. And so I really encourage founders to really be intentional in asking for help. The worst anybody could ever say to you is no, and they're probably not your person anyway. And so seek mentors. And as you grow in success, become a mentor. I'm really quite sure that everything that we're doing right now is about inspiring the next generation of founders And that's important to see. I still have mentors, and I love to mentor. So, show up for each other. Be grateful because, to my earlier point, like with my first brand, when it first launched, there wasn't social, there was no Instagram or LinkedIn or Facebook even. I mean, that's, how long ago it was. And so it's really, you're so lucky that you get to, those founders that are out there starting out, building, trying to keep it going, that, those resources are at your fingertips, literally. So use them.
So helpful. Well, now we are going to pivot into one of my most fun parts of all of this.
Yes.
This is 5 Fire Facts, which is a rapid interview series to just get like a candid glimpse into some of your personal hacks and perspectives.
Okay.
Are you ready?
Let's do it.
All right. One word to define your current journey.
Abundant.
Go-to source of inspiration.
My girlfriends.
Favorite way to stay active.
Pilates.
Go-to comfort food.
Pizza.
Ideal way to spend a day off.
In bed. With my kids.
Guess that.
Watching movies. Yes, in bed.
Nyakio, thank you so much. This was so fun and so inspiring.
Thank you.
I mean, your journey has been so incredible. I've learned so much, and I know that our audience will too, so thank you.
Oh my gosh, thank you, and congrats. I think this is amazing, and thank you for creating the space for this. This is going to be wonderful.
I really loved my conversation with Nyakio, and I want to share just a few of my key takeaways with you. So Nyakio shared that when you're scaling a business, it's so easy to feel pressured to say yes to every opportunity that comes your way, especially when you're desperate for that next check to keep your business going. But here's the thing, when you undervalue your services or your products just to stay relevant, you're not just shortchanging yourself, but you're also setting a precedent that can be really hard to break. The power of saying no may seem counterintuitive, but it's a crucial skill that every entrepreneur needs to master. So trusting the process means having faith in your vision and the values that you bring to the table. It's about making strategic choices that align with your long-term goals rather than short-term gains. So the next time that you're faced with a decision that requires you to compromise your worth, remember that saying no can really open the door to better, more aligned opportunities that truly reflect your value. Nyakio also shared that it is easy to get caught up in the investor hamster wheel, which is constantly chasing after the next round of funding. It is so crucial to be diligent about how you're going to use the cash and how frequently you fundraise, because every time you raise capital, you're potentially diluting your ownership in the company. And that's why it's not just about getting any investor on board. It's about having a supportive cap table. So look for investors who are not only invested in the success of the business, but are also deeply invested in the success of your vision. They should be partners who understand your long-term goals and are committed to helping you achieve them. So by being selective and strategic about fundraising, you can maintain more control of your company and ensure that it grows in a way that actually aligns with your vision. So Nyakio shared that when it comes to hiring, it is so essential to look beyond the resume and also consider a person's skill set, resilience, and values. And this is so important when you're also building a remote team where trust is the foundation of effective collaboration. Aligning values is so key because you can teach skills, but it's so challenging to actually change someone's core beliefs. Hiring someone with the right background but misaligned values can actually set your company back. And as a hands-on founder, it's so important to recognize when to step back and when to step in. Knowing when to delegate and when to provide guidance is crucial for your team's growth and success. So prioritize values as much as someone's work experience and be strategic in your leadership approach to ensure that your team can thrive. So those were just a few of the many key takeaways from my conversation with Nyakio. I always learn so much in all of these conversations, and I really hope that you did too. To stay connected with Nyakio, the Maker's Mindset community, and me, check out all the details in the episode description below. And don't forget to subscribe to this series, leave a review, and share this episode with your community. Thanks so much for tuning in.